Hey, good evening, everyone. This is our first best talk of this semester, and I was telling our guest, this is a weird dynamic for us because last year we had no best talks in person. Everything was virtual, everything was over Zoom. We had to move into that format second semester of the previous year. So it has been nearly 2 years since we actually gathered in this space for a best talk. And as we're making that transition, we are live streaming still on Zoom because we have guests who are joining us who aren't here. And we're actually recording this too, and we will post it tomorrow on the Best Talks webpage. And we'll do that for all of our Best Talks this semester. At the conclusion, I'll make sure that you know the upcoming Best Talk speakers that we still have coming this semester. I would encourage you to ask questions tonight. Be thoughtful, write them down if that's helpful. And Craig will be more than happy to answer your questions. If you want to do that in the midst of his speaking, you can do that. If you want to wait until the end, he's going to allow for time for Q&A as well. And then I will try to monitor questions which come in on Zoom. So if you're on Zoom, go ahead and send me a message directly in the chat, and I will ask those questions too. At this time, I'm going to ask President Lewis if he will come up and just open our time in prayer.
Hello, friends. Great to see you here. Great to have everyone who's joining us online. Let's open in prayer together. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this time. Thank you for the opportunity to gather here this evening, and we thank you for the lives of Craig and Brenda Proulx. Thank you for the work that you began in their lives. You began in their lives years ago. We thank you for the time that they spent here on this campus, for the development that you did in Craig's life while he was a student here at Houghton. We thank you for the career and the impact that he has enjoyed, the impact that they've had on the communities that they've served and live in. And more than anything, we thank you that they have been and continue to be faithful ambassadors for Jesus Christ. We ask that you would bless our time here together, open our hearts, open our minds to receive whatever it is that he has to share with us. And then as they depart, Lord, we pray that you would go with them, keep them safe, bless them and their families. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
So let me tell you a little bit about our guest speaker tonight. And I'm actually gonna truncate this a little bit because I think you're gonna share some of what's in here when you're talking. So Craig Proulx was born and raised in Auburn, New York. During his junior year in high school, he started a small business called Blown Insulation of Central New York and began blowing cellular insulation to new and existing homes and businesses. And he was telling us today that was actually quite lucrative. Craig initially planned to attend Cornell University, but decided on Houghton College just 2 weeks before the fall semester. And there was actually a Houghton alum at his church. Craig, being a newborn Christian, said, you know what? Instead of going to Cornell, you need to consider Houghton College. And things changed really quickly. Well, in 1976, he received a bachelor's degree in biology from Houghton. And although he was planning on heading to med school, he was recruited by the FBI in Washington, D.C. to conduct forensic science research. After 2 years with the FBI, he resigned and began working on complex Navy research projects. Just this last year, fast forward a little bit, Craig and his business partner sold their company, Accelerated Development and Support Corporation, and he and another partner recently formed a new company called eWorthy Technical Solutions. And he's going to explain in a lot more detail some of the things that they're working on. Maybe more importantly than his professional career, Craig is also a part-time missionary for Adventures in Missions, and he leads short-term mission projects all around the world. Craig and his wife, Brenda, who's here tonight with us, raised their 2 children, and Sally is a Houghton alum, class of 2008. She holds a Doctor of Physical Therapy, and Wilson, who is one of Liberty University online school directors. Craig and Brenda have just retired to Wilmington, North Carolina. So Craig, if you would join us tonight, we appreciate that. Please welcome.
I think I can just forward
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll do that. Well, it's great to be back at Houghton. I don't get here very often. The last time Brenda and I were here was about 4 years ago. I was at a 1976 class reunion. I did graduate with the previous president, Shirley Mullen. I didn't know her very well. I remember her, but I didn't really associate with her very much. Also, I did have classes with, if you've seen her on TV, Deborah Burke. I had chemistry classes with organic and PChem and a couple of other chemistry classes with Deborah Burke, but I really didn't get to know her, but I'm glad to be here. I really am. I've made mostly good decisions in my life, and this was one of them. Besides being married to my wife for many years now, this was a very good decision for me. And let me just kind of start. You know, as Carl said, I started a business when I was in high school, when I was a junior, believe it or not. And I was making so much money, I couldn't believe it. It was more money than I could actually spend as a junior in high school. And that's kind of weird. I know it's kind of odd, but I started that business, and then I decided that I wasn't going to go to college right away. I just kind of work at this business and make a little bit of money. And I had just become a Christian too. I mean, I was the bad guy, the bad kid in Auburn, New York. I mean, I had police out looking for me I had arrest warrants for me. And I mean, I was a bad kid. I just was. And I became a Christian, and I was on my way to Cornell in Ithaca, New York. I think most of you know where that is. And I decided to go there. And at the church I was attending, there were two women who one of them had just graduated here from Houghton. And she said to me, and I was telling this to Carl and Dr. Lewis, she said to me, she says, "Craig, you do not want to go to Cornell." And I said, "Oh, I don't." And she said, "No, you really don't." And I said, "Okay." She says, "You want to go to Houghton College?" And I said, "Well, where's that?" And she explained to me where it was and how rich it was and from an educational standpoint. And she said, "Go check it out." Well, this is like 2 weeks before the semester starts. And so I got it in my car and I drove here, went to a class or two, and I just kind of felt the Lord just kind of, changing my heart a little bit. Actually, I said, "Wow, I like this place. This is pretty good." I'd been to Cornell a number of times. I didn't live that far away from Cornell, actually. And I ended up, coming here in my sophomore year, because because I was making good money at this business that I owned. I decided to take some night classes at a community college in Auburn, with Auburn Community College, and I just decided to take some night classes, and so that's what I did. Going to church, trying to mature as a Christian. And ended up, being here. And then I decided, well, I was a pre-med major, and I thought, well, I'll go to medical school. And but I applied, and I kind of turned these places down where I applied, and I got a letter in the mail. This was, the Lord's doing. I got a letter in the mail, and it was from the FBI laboratories. They, FBI for many years, all they hired was lawyers and accountants. That's all there was in the Bureau. And high crime now was high tech, and crime was changing. And they needed to hire biologists and chemists and engineers and physicists, psychologists, mathematicians, a whole slew of all kinds of people in the Bureau. And I ended up packing my little suitcase and the few clothes that I owned, and I moved to Washington, D.C. And I started working for the Bureau. You can see here, I had an old photo. They put me in the FBI laboratories, and I was kind of doing forensic science research for them part-time, but the other part of the time, they had me as like a lab gopher, and I was a gopher, which was fine. You know, I'm 22, 23 years old, and it was fine for me. I was having a pretty good time, you know, in Washington, D.C., and I was working a lot in the bomb squad, and we were getting these bombs in and looking at them and figuring out how these domestic terrorists were making bombs with cell phones now. Not so much cell phones, but you know, timers, and then they got more sophisticated with cell phones. And so we were looking at those and blowing things up, and it was good for a couple of years. So I worked for the FBI doing different things for them in Washington, D.C. For like 2.5 years. And I thought to myself, well, now it's been a good job. The Bureau is a fine organization, it's a very good organization. And I decided that I did not want to stay a bureaucrat the rest of my life. I had a little bit more of a spirit in me that I wanted to do some things. And so I went to work with a friend of mine who was encouraging me to come work with him for the Navy. So I worked for this company who we had a fairly large contract with the US Navy. And what my job was, I won't get into it, but it was very quickly, was the people like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and General Electric would build these like sonars, radars, missiles, torpedoes, and they would hand them over to me and a couple of my colleagues, and we would design the logistics and maintenance packages for the next 4 or 5 years for these. You know, so this is what I was designing. I was designing maintenance and logistics packages for weapon systems, and that was my job. And it was kind of cool. It did take me a little bit around the world. You know, I've spent some time in the Middle East. I've been to some other countries, but it was mainly, you know, for the US Navy. Let's see here. I'm trying to
Go to the next slide.
Yeah, page up, page down,
Enter.
enter. There we
I
go.
just want to use the arrows.
Which should I push?
Sorry, just using the arrows right now.
Oh, okay. I thought I hit those. All right. Anyway, so I started working for this, and I moved around just a little bit. I worked for a couple of major, what I would call major naval contractors, Navy and military contractors, some big names. And I started working on different projects, and I thought I'd just show you a couple of projects that I worked on here. This was a fun one right here. This is an Ied Jammer. This is if you've seen MRAPs, vehicles for the Army and the Marine Corps, you saw them being blown up by, you know, people with cell phones and garage door openers, and it would blow up a vehicle or tank, you know, in Iraq. This was an Ied Jammer, the company I was working for, and some very smart individuals at this company came up with creating an electronic cloud for like 2, 3, or 4 or 5 football fields wide we would create this electronic jamming cloud. And so as a convoy would be going down the road in Iraq, and you could, and we had satellite images, and we could see a terrorist come out from under a bush or something, and he's got, what does he have? He's got a cell phone, or he's got a garage door opener that he bought from Stanley here in the United States and got shipped over to Iraq. And he would start clicking this and nothing would happen. Why? Because we had one of these little tiny boxes under the seat in most of the vehicles that we had in Iraq. And when you started a convoy, every vehicle had this, and you just reach under the seat and you would turn it on, and it was called Warlock. That was a code word. Back then, it was kind of a secret thing. We didn't tell anybody we had it. Now it's unclassified. I can talk about it. But we had built this electronic jamming system so vehicles could safely pass along the road. Now, the images you saw on TV, unfortunately, they did not have a Warlock system in them, and some of them did get blown up and people lost their lives. But for the most part, a lot of embassy vehicles around the world have these in their trunk, or a version of it now, and they work pretty well. You can't blow something up with a cell phone or a garage door opener any longer because of stuff like this. So we started working on these, and so just as a kind of a fun thing, this is kind of the work that I was doing. Fast forward a little bit, and in 2014, I teamed up with a partner a guy that I have known for quite some time, a guy named Gary Perkins. He's a Black African-American, MIT #1 graduate in computer science. Gary Perkins, I got to know him. And he said, Craig, I need you. And I thought to myself, well, I need you, Gary, because you're a lot smarter than I am. And but Gary and I had weaknesses and we had strengths. Okay. And we worked well as a team, and I helped him form this company, and we started hiring PhDs. I'm not a PhD, neither is Gary, but most of the people in the company, we started hiring these PhDs, and we started winning contracts with the Office of Naval Research, ONR. Now, what does ONR do? ONR is an organization that I can tell you what best way to tell you is I'll tell you what they told me to do for them. And they would give me fairly large amounts of money in contracts, 10 million, 20, $30 million contracts to look out 5 years in advance and say, Craig, you tell me where I need to be as a naval force. What is coming my way? What is the Chinese doing? What are the Russians doing? What are the North Koreans doing that I need? Where are my technology gaps? Oh, okay. We can do that. So the Navy would issue, was classified, they would issue these, what we thought our technology gaps were in the Navy. I would take that piece of paper, so to speak, and I would go to Silicon Valley. I would go all over the United States. I'd even go to some foreign countries, and we would look at different technology that was being developed by small startup companies and big corporations, and try to figure out how to fill these technology gaps. Here's one of them right here. The Navy has been building a laser weapon. You go, what? This is like Buck Rogers. Yeah, it is. Here it is, 150 kilowatt laser on the USS Ponce. This photo was taken. I know where it was taken. It was taken in the Mediterranean, and the USS Ponce went around the Horn of Hormuz into the Arabian Sea, and believe it or not, we were only doing testing on the ship. And what did the Iranians do? They sent out a bunch of ribbed boats with one person in it with explosives toward the Ponce, and we were picking them off with this laser system. We would point it at them. It's a green laser about a mile away, and we would just, it wouldn't blow up or anything. It would just neutralize the engine. It would stop the engine. It would burn up the engine, the electronics in the engine. And so we didn't expect to do this kind of testing. We did. It was great. Hey, this is real people coming at us here. Okay. So we were building these 50 to 100 to 150 kilowatt lasers for disabling small boats and UAVs. We also, it's unclassified now, you can go and look at the Navy laws demonstrator, and you can see it. There's some video, we got some videos. Actually, we pointed them at some drones coming in toward us, like a mile or two away. And Unisys built the electronic tracking system for it. So it's hooked to electronic tracking, so we can track a drone coming in, and we can point it at it, and it will follow you. The other interesting thing that I worked on, had a number of people working on this, is you've got, we've had some very successful, both the Predator and Reaper unmanned aerial systems for the military. You can see them right here. They do a lot of reconnaissance. They have some very special optics. They've got some cameras. They've got optics in them that at 10,000, 30,000 feet, you can count the hairs on your head. It's pretty amazing what you can see with a Predator or a Reaper. And also they do carry weapons, and they have gone out on missions for the Army and for the Air Force and the Navy. They've gone out on missions and have done some really fine work where you didn't want to put a pilot in harm's way with a lot of Russian missiles pointed at you and probably going to shoot you down. So we've lost a few of these, but we didn't lose any pilots really. What's interesting is I'll just stop here and say that artificial intelligence and machine learning are becoming big things in both commercial applications, for industry, for commerce, but also for the military here. I was just telling Sam a couple of years, 2 years ago, I was at an Air Force conference, a classified Air Force conference, and there was probably 50 of us in the room. And we had this 2-star Air Force admiral talking, and he was in charge of flight operations for the Air Force. And he made a very interesting prediction, which I thought he would keep to himself, but he put it out there for public consumption. And he said, we do not, as the Air Force, we don't want to build another manned fighter single-seat aircraft. And everybody in the room goes, what? He goes, yeah, we don't want to build another single-seat fighter aircraft, because we've just delivered the F-22 and the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter, to the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the Navy. And that's a manned aircraft. We got men and women flying those. I have a son-in-law who's out on the Harry S. Truman right now. He's a squadron leader for the Sunliners. He flies an F-18. And he tells me about some unbelievable missions that he goes on. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go where he goes, because you got a 50% chance of coming back. The stuff that he does, it's amazing. So this is why we want to build a manned aircraft. And the only way to do that, the only way to really do that is we have to get confidence in building AI algorithms and build the confidence up in AI and machine learning. Why? So we can send an unmanned, a new fighter aircraft that's unmanned. We can send that out when we want to do a mission, either reconnaissance or deter some aircraft in the area. And the AI will know exactly what to do. There won't be really hardly a human in the loop, where the AI will know, we know what to do if that plane goes right, we know what to do. If the plane goes left, if the plane dives that we're chasing, this aircraft will know what to do, because what's going to do it is AI. AI is going to do it. I used to, when Dr. Mullen would come to Washington, D.C. for her annual conference in December, Brenda, my wife, and I would get together with her, and we'd have dinner, and she would ask me, she said, Craig, what's coming down the pike? You know, what should Houghton College be looking at? You know, we're a fine liberal arts, you know, institution, but you know, what's the icing on the cake? And I told her years ago, starting about 8 or 9 years ago when I was meeting with her, I said, data analytics. I said, big thing. Data analytics is going to be big. Machine learning is coming on the scene, huge. AI, big. Cybersecurity, anything to do with forensics, either in the criminal justice world or even, and Sam and I were talking, even in the economics and accounting world, forensics is a big thing. You know, start courses, start curriculums in forensics. And the other area, as I'm just talking about here, is intelligent systems. Right now, I can honestly tell you that the Navy doesn't really want to build too many more manned ships. They want to build unmanned, what they call unmanned vessels. They want to arm them to the teeth, cruise missile, Tomahawk, Mark 52 torpedoes. It will be armed to the teeth, but it will be out there by itself, unmanned. Now, obviously, there's a lot of challenges to that, because you don't want somebody to board that while it's moving and maybe take it over. So there's a lot of things to be thought about for an unmanned vessel. But that's what the Navy wants to do. They want to take men and women out of harm's way, and they want to put these vehicles out in the water. We're building right now. Boeing just won a huge contract to build the Orca. That is a 20-foot small submarine, going to be armed to the teeth, and it will go out and do missions unmanned. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to have better AI and better machine learning and better data analytics to help that autonomous system make decisions. It's just going to have to. The Marine Corps, the Army, they're building vehicles right now, manned vehicles that will be on land, and from a logistics standpoint, it will take, you know, supplies, unmanned convoys. So if they get blown up, who cares? They won't have any people in them, but we'll have mile-long convoys delivering, you know, blood, packages, whatever, hospital equipment to maybe to a battlefield, and it will do it unmanned. Last year I was at a conference. I wish I should have brought a photo of this. I was speaking at a conference about this piece of software that I'm building with this other company. It's a maintenance portal. I'll just call it that. It's a maintenance portal. And what we're doing is I'm building AI algorithms and machine learning algorithms into this to predict when something's going to fail. So if I can get enough data, like as an example, I get enough data from your car, from both of them, and let the machine learn how fast you drive, where you drive, do machine learning, capturing all that data. I'm building algorithms that will start predicting when that car will fail based on your maintenance records. And I'm doing this for the military. Well, I was giving this talk at a conference, and it was very interesting. This guy from Uber, we all know who Uber is. We've taken an Uber. Well, Uber Lyft, Google it sometime, Uber Lyft. This guy from Uber Lyft, the chief technologist for Uber Lyft comes up to me and says, Craig, I need to talk to you. I go, okay, what about? He said, well, he said, you know, Uber, he said, we're now just teamed up with Bell Helicopter and Sikorsky. You know who they are. Bell Helicopter, they make vertical lift, you know, helicopters. Sikorsky and Bell. They've teamed up with Uber. Uber is going to start Uber Lyft in a couple of years. As soon as they get their FAA certification on this, they're making unmanned small helicopters that will handle anywhere from 8 to 10 people. And in major cities like New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, these Uber Lyft unmanned helicopters, you will buy your ticket, you know, off of your cell phone, and you will board on at wherever an Uber Lyft is, okay? And you want to get to the other side of LA? Well, it'll take you an hour. I've driven it from one end of LA to the other. You don't get there in 10 minutes. So Uber Lyft is saying, or parts of New York. So what Uber Lyft is going to do is they are going to have these unmanned vertical lift. They're cool looking. You ought to see them. And he said, Craig, I need to talk to you because the FAA has come to us and said, well, if they're unmanned, you know, we gotta know a ton of information about this. This is a whole new paradigm for us to approve something like this. Can you tell me when an Uber Lyft is going to fail? And I said, I'm getting there. I can't tell you yet, but I said, if you give me enough information, I was talking to Carmen, head of the data analytics department here about this. I said, Carmen, you give me enough data, and eventually I can learn when something will fail. I bring this up because this is the future, you know, data analytics, which I think some of you guys are studying right now. Data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, intelligent systems. You wouldn't believe some of the hedge fund companies out there who on Wall Street are looking for these new startup companies, and they're starting up all over. I can give you names of a bunch of them, like trucking companies that'll be unmanned. You know, you'll be going down, what's a major highway here? You know, 19 here, Highway 19, or you'll be on 380 down or toward Rochester, and you'll see these unmanned trucks going down the road. And what Mercedes-Benz and General Motors, what they want to know is when are these things going to fail, Craig? When are they going to fail? And we're getting close to starting to predict that, so you can see how important that is. With that, now you're probably sitting here wondering, well, Craig, talk about what I should be doing, you know, from a career standpoint. What should I take as my first job? Where should I look for my first job? I was chatting with Sam a little bit about that here right before I came up, and I said to him, I said, the first thing to do is go on LinkedIn, and you all know what that is, and develop a profile. Develop a very good profile. Pat yourself on the back. Pat yourself on the back. And produce a very good profile. And secondly, I would look for, during your years here, look for internships. When I had 2 HR people working for me, two very smart ladies, and I said to both of them, I said, when we're hiring these new students right out of college, I said, look, I said, tell me how many have college internships. I want to know, you know, if they made the effort to get into a college internship, then I think I want them. I think I want them working for me. I'll take a chance on them. So, you know, and then there's a book out there I read a number of years ago, Bradford Smart, called Top Grading. He says there's 3 types of people to hire: a C, a B, and an A. this guy makes a lot of sense. And a lot of MBA students, I think around the country, it's a required reading. Bradford Smart, it's called Top Grading. And he talks about each of these, the C person, the B person, and the A person. And Bradford Smart says, you become the A. Become the A person. And when I started hiring, at one point, I had an organization of 690 people under me. And I said, I had C candidates coming to me that I could hire. I had B candidates and I had A. And after a while, I quit hiring C people. I said, it's costing me more money than it's worth. I'm only going to hire A, and even if I got to pay a little bit more, I'm only going to hire the A person who can just is a good worker, has a good work ethic, and becomes indispensable. And that's what I did. I realized early on in my career, when I started working under for this Navy contractor, I looked around me. There were some very smart people there, and I looked around, and it dawned on me. I said, I've got to become indispensable. I've got to learn this job up and down, right and left, learn it so well that they can't fire me. They couldn't. And I became that was my goal, become indispensable. I learned everything I could and more about that job. And I always took on, my boss always gave me these projects, and I always took on these new projects. I can do that. I'll do that. Half the time I'm thinking, oh man, I can't do that. But I took it anyway. I just did. And and I found myself getting further and further, kind of up the chain. And one day I looked down and there's 690 people under me. And I'm running this huge division, building hardware, putting services around the world. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It just was. But I became indispensable. And get to know as many people as you can. You've heard the author out there, Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. He's written a couple of very interesting books. He's a secular guy all the way. So there's some things I don't agree with Malcolm about. But he's written things like Outliers and Tipping Point. I recommend those two books just for light reading. And basically what he says is you get to know people and get to make these connections wherever you can. Like the Uber guy, I made a connection with him. He's now, this Uber Lyft guy has put me in contact with 21 different people who email me now and say, Craig, what about this? What about that? I go, wow, I met one guy and all of a sudden I've got 21 connections. Great opportunities for jobs. I think if I sent on my resume, maybe one of these 21 people would hire me. I'm sure one of these 21 people would hire me. I'm sure of it. Get to know people. Go out of your way to help them, if it takes a little bit of your time. So I'll give you. I'll be glad to do it. I will give you my email address, my personal Gmail address. Make sure you get it from me. If you ever have a question or you want some help on something, I will gladly help you. I will take time and I will do whatever I can to help you. Look for a job, make a contact in Washington, D.C. I know a number of people who run some agencies down there, and they're in some pretty good positions. I know a number of companies, but companies have a pretty good churn, so I'm always losing track of somebody, unfortunately. But I don't know. Carl,
Open up.
let me open it up for any questions that you guys may have. I'm gladly try to answer them if I can.
So one of the things that we talked about earlier, and you alluded to as you were talking to us, is the value of the liberal arts preparation. And although you didn't use these words directly, it's an appetite for learning, but it was also learning how to learn.
Yeah.
And as I was hearing you talk about becoming indispensable, you alluded to the fact that you tried to learn everything you possibly could to get to the point that you were indispensable. So encouraging maybe our students of what that looks like for you and the value of that liberal arts prep, the value of the liberal arts education and how that's preparing them for the future of what you encourage them to consider moving forward in that area.
Yeah. It took me a couple of years, but after I graduated from Houghton, I moved working for the FBI, and I started taking graduate courses at American University. This is a fun story. I was taking graduate courses at American University, and I applied there. And there was this famous lady, Dr. Martha Sager, who at American University, she was the top professor, I think. And all of a sudden, I took a class from her, and her and I became pretty good friends. And but the thing was, I was sitting in these graduate classes, and I'm saying to myself, I learned this when I was a sophomore at Houghton. Tell me something, come on, tell me something I don't know. No, really. I tell my wife this all the time. You know, she just looks at me and rolls her eyes. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm taking these graduate courses that I was working on a master's in the technology of management at the time at American University. And I kept taking these classes. I learned that when I was a sophomore at Houghton. Tell me something I don't know. And then I look back, I'm going, wait a minute, Houghton, it was too good of a deal. It was too good to be true. Houghton taught me how to read, how to write, how to communicate, all the liberal arts stuff from a psychological standpoint, how to communicate with people. You know, I remember taking a psychology class from here. And I'm thinking, what am I taking a psychology class at Houghton for? It was an elect. You know, I'm thinking, well, I learned about people's personalities, you know, and different things. And I'm thinking, wow, I learned a lot. I guess I did learn a lot from that sociology or psychology class. You know, a liberal arts degree just really did help me a lot. The technology was coming. You know, I wish, I'll look back now, maybe it would have been nice if I would have learned a little bit of technology at Houghton. But that's what Dr. Lewis and the rest of the faculty is, I think, working on right now is where is the workforce heading? Besides my great liberal arts, you know, education that I'm getting here at Houghton, let me put a little icing on the cake. What should I be learning? You know, remember that classified list that I had of technology gaps from the Navy, and I was working on that. You know, Houghton, and I talked to Dr. Lewis about this. He's desperate. He is working on it very hard, and so all the professors are. Is where do we go from here? What do we send these Houghton students out with both a liberal arts education, but a taste of data analytics, a taste of intelligent systems, a taste of AI and machine learning and forensics and different things that will really propel your career above everybody else. I mean, I worked with a couple of very interesting big universities, Carnegie Mellon. I would bring them on as a subcontractor to me to do certain things. I would bring on Georgia Tech Research Institute, Penn State University, the Applied Research Lab. I would bring that institution on, and I would manage them. And when I would look at some of those students that coming out of those institutions, I would say to myself, they're a little ahead of everybody. Yeah, because that undergraduate woman or man that was just graduating, I'm thinking they just didn't get a liberal arts education. They got a little bit of technology sprinkled in here, and data. They graduated with a data analytics degree. Wow, they're a good leap ahead of everybody else here in the workforce. You know, really are. I think I mentioned did I answer your question, Carl?
Yeah, so I think we have time for at least one more question.
No,
if you would like to
please,
ask.
ask. I gladly try to answer.
Craig, quick question
Yeah.
for you. Oh, I know you're a technology guy, but you're also a business leader. What's one piece of advice about being a business leader?
Business leader. I have a lot of scars. I do. I did some, as a manager of some medium and large organizations, I did some things wrong. I didn't have an MBA. I just got stuck in these jobs, and I did some things wrong, but I learned that if you hire the A person and you bring them in and you give them, you let the organization know what your mission is. This is our roadmap. I wrote a strategic plan every year for my organization. I said, and we're not going to vary. We're not going down some rabbit hole. This is what we're doing. And from a leader standpoint, what I would do is I would develop a strategic plan for that year. And I said, and I would hold a conference and I would bring not everybody in, but all the leaders of my organization. I would bring them in and I'm going, I'd get a facilitator because I'm not a good public speaker and I wouldn't, I couldn't facilitate this. So I'd hire a good facilitator in and we would go over this strategic plan that I had written up. I would write it and we would go over it and I'd say, are we clear now? Does everybody know where we're heading? Does everybody know what the end goal is? And I'd get some, like the deer look, the headlights. I'd get like a cow staring at a passing train, I'd get some, but most people would get it. And what I would do is I would let these 8 people, I'd let them run. Even if I'd give them a short noose around their neck, but I would let them go. And I'd say, okay, you tell me what I need to be doing. You're smarter than me. Most of the people in my that big organization that I ran, most of them were 10 times smarter than I was. But I was able to see their talent and I would let them do, I wouldn't micromanage it. I wouldn't micromanage it. Had to fire a bad couple of apples, but that's all I had to do. And if people knew what they had to do, they had a roadmap in front of them. So I just let them, I let them work. And it worked. Most 90% of the time, you let some smart individual do their job and be creative. They will take you places that I never thought of. I mean, I would get a knock on my door and people would come in and say, Craig, I want to show you something. Let me show you something. I go, yeah, I'm all ears. Let's take a look at it. I go, wow. I said, when did you do this? And they go, well, we were messing around here and we did this. We thought you'd like this. They knew that I liked this stuff. And I just got into a very good relationship with these individuals. I think I answered your question. Yeah. Strategic planning, very, very important, very important.
Right. One last question. I know we're running short on time. You talked about your decision to come to Holden.
Yeah.
And your faith playing a role in that. And wanting
Yes.
to come somewhere where faith was integrated with the high quality liberal arts education. What advice could you give to our students who are thinking about how they will integrate their faith into their lives and in their careers, especially since most of our students are not going to careers in ministry. So thinking about how you integrate that into your career as a layperson.
A great question. Early in my career, when I became a Christian, I was still, the Lord was still working on me early on, even during Houghton years. The Lord was still maturing me. There was things that I was sinner saved by grace, and I was trying to get rid of some stuff. And slowly but surely, I got, through scripture, through some very good counseling, I was able to get rid of a lot of garbage in my life. And and live by the fruits of the Spirit. And you can see the fruits, you can start to see the fruits of the Spirit, I think, in my life. Then when I graduated and got into the workforce, I just wanted to be somebody who was genuine and honest, and people could count on me, and they realized that I started to become a caring person, believe it or not. And I did. And I think I can answer this in also a quick story. When I first started working for the Navy, I started working for this guy named Bill Rogers. His name was Bill Rogers. And he was a Harvard MBA #1 out of his class. And somehow Lord put me under this guy, and he was right off of GQ magazine. I mean, he looked great. His wife looked great. Their 2 kids looked great. I mean, this looked like a Cinderella kind of a, story. It was unbelievable. Every time I saw this guy, I think, wow, he's a pretty smart guy. He's a very smart guy. He looks nice, and he's got a great job, and he drives a really nice car, and I'm thinking, very interesting, but this was a rough office. I mean, there was some rough, very secular individuals in this office, but I wouldn't laugh at their jokes. I didn't run with the crowd. I would stand up. I would actually say, no, we can't lie about that. That's putting out false information here. We can't tell the customer that. And now they would kind of look at me like, oh, we can tell this like lie, Craig. I said, no, we can't. This is what we're going to do. One day, Bill Rogers calls me into his office. I thought I was getting fired. He calls me into his office, and he sits me down, and he said, Craig, he said, I need to talk to you. He said, you've got this faith, you've got this relationship that you claim with Jesus Christ. And he says, that is so foreign to me. He said, I didn't learn any of this stuff at Harvard MBA school, ethics, really. And he said, you just kind of walk against the tide all the time. He says, people make fun of you. They call you the preacher. I didn't know that, but I guess they did. And he told me about his marriage and about some things he had done. And he said, Craig, my life is in shambles. I'm thinking, he's married to a beautiful woman. He's got a car, he's got money, Harvard MBA, and his life's in shambles. But it was in real shambles. He told me some very dark stuff, and I'm thinking, oh, and he said, Craig, he says, how do I get what you have? I go, wow, this guy wants what I want, what I have. I'm thinking, what do I have? Oh, I've got a testimony that is true. When somebody comes to me and says, Craig, I need some help, I'm going to give them some help. They know that they can count on me. When somebody, I've learned the hard way too, when somebody in my church comes to me and says, Craig, will you pray for me? How many times have you done this? Yeah, I'll pray for you. and you don't. I've learned the hard way. I do. I would say, Dr. Lewis, that I think the scripture is very clear of how we are supposed to act and how we're supposed to be. So it's always not, terribly black and white, but the Holy Spirit, I think, works in us and tells us, what we should be, where we should be going. And that's the one thing that I did. I think I learned a lot from Houghton College in a faith-based school here, in a Christ-centered school. I learned a lot of how I should be living and what my purpose in life really is. It's really not to, get a job and make money. We should be glorifying Jesus Christ every chance that we can get. And I think the Lord has, being in the Lord's will, I was able to do that. And I think the Lord put me in places where I could influence a lot of people. I'll end with this. I still get emails from people saying, Craig, remember I worked for you, 18, 19, 20 years ago? I'm going, no. Well, I don't remember. They go, you invited me to your church. And my husband, this is a lady recently down in Jupiter, Florida, wrote me this email, said, you invited me to your church, and my husband and I now are living for Christ. I'm going, wow, really? Yeah. And I think it was because of the way I treated her, the way I acted, and I got, like I said, I got a great education here, a great liberal arts education. And the Lord just kept putting me in positions where I think I could influence people. I think that was my mission field. I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, believe me, but he was putting me in places where I had a lot of smart people working for me, and he just used me.
Thank you very much. A token, and you will see it's branded Houghton College, so we would love for you to take that with you when you are out
Okay.
in the workplace.
All right.
An opportunity to tell someone about Houghton, would you get that chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.